This panel is being set up to talk about the tech advancements that might impact the way fans access and engage with live sports in the future. So we're talking obviously about things like metaverse, virtual reality, extended reality, etc. Also going to talk a little bit more about 5G and its potential uses, plus sports streaming apps and object-based media. With me are Andy Beale, Chief Engineer of BT Sport, and Matt Stagg, who's Director of Mobile and Immersive Strategy at BT Sport. Thanks for being with me, gentlemen. I wanted to start with you, Andy, and talk, I know we've talked about it a little before, but talk more about 5G, its potential use in production and broadcast. How do you assess 5G's impact going forward? We've already seen how it's being used now, but how do you see it being further used?
So, and Matt's talked about this a lot as well. Hi everyone, by the way. Nice to see you all. 5G's been, in some ways, a little bit of a disappointing story because 4 or 5 years ago, when we were first talking about it, Matt, on this stage, I think, at the first ever Broadcast Sport Innovation Forum, we were doing some demonstrations from Wembley, showing the real potential that we thought of 5G as an enabler for wireless connectivity, both on public and private network. And at that time, the roadmap clearly showed we would have all the key tools in the 5G toolset to enable contention, prevent the issues we have with contention on a normal public network. So we did a bit of ring fence through network slicing or whatever the technology might be to give us proper protected access and backhaul. Those things in the public domain still haven't materialised, unfortunately. The priorities for the telcos haven't been aligned quite the way we were hoping with the sorts of use cases that we show. And so what we've done, we've pivoted and we've used private 5G to replace traditional COFDM type RF facilities instead. And there have been some really successful demos of this year. We worked on a demonstration at Saracens where we put up a private 5G network, much easier to install than say a traditional COFDM radio. We have to have very specialist experts, and you can add all sorts of devices to that network that you couldn't in a COFDM world. So you, as well as just RF cameras, we can add standard devices that are connected. So things like iPads, for either monitoring or auto cue or any other device you want that's IP connected can now be connected to that private 5G network but enjoy no contention, and that's the real benefit of it. And Matt's done some projects with people like the BBC on the Commonwealth Games, really showing that in a very busy, congested space where lots of fans are arriving or public with their cell devices, a private standalone 5G network stands up completely and prevents contention. So we think it's really exciting. It's the ability to add not just broadcast-specific devices like radio cameras, but any network-connected device can now join that wireless network and become a tool. So it enables all sorts of creative opportunities, people who are software writing products on traditional IP products, laptops, tablets, whatever, for both production and consumer. So we think it's a really interesting opportunity.
And do you think fans... Sorry.
No, I was just going to add to that. One of the reasons that we're able to do that in the UK, which is not unique around the world, but we were one of the first, is the regulator has freed up some spectrum. So no longer do the mobile operators have all of the 5G spectrum, which we thought might happen. So it means that you can just go and apply for a license in an area, and then you pay for that, and then you use it, and then someone else can use it afterwards. So that means that we have a total control over our sort of own productions.
And do you think that's going to carry on, that the use of private 5G is actually going to be the pattern and the strategy going forward?
Yeah, definitely. We're monitoring changes and we're working with all, obviously, we were part of BT, so we have had close relationships, but we're looking in the industry and driving it forward. And there may be some further down the road map for mobile operators. It aligns with quite a few things. There's things like medical imaging, education that need the same requirements we need. So I think when they align, it'll make a better business case for mobile operators, but we'll still carry on doing our own as well.
I'm quite interested, just from almost an international perspective, where does the UK sort of sit right now in terms of having private 5G networks to the rest of the world? Are the rest of the world doing that, or are they relying on their telcos?
So not many people are relying on the telcos for it, because actually in the public networks, it's all, I mean, the business case for rolling out 5G is all consumer. So there's not, at the moment, a particularly large amount of uplink. So, and there's a few other countries that are doing it, but Andy went to MotoGP, and that was the first one in the world that had been done.
Yeah, we built a private 5G network at Silverstone just over a year ago for the British Grand Prix, working with the rights holder Dorna and their RF partners to really understand. They have this problem that the private traditional RF bands, we call them, all over the globe, which is interesting, touching on your question, are so varied and they vary wildly in the amount of spectrum available. So some territories they go to, the spectrum is so small that we have to make cutbacks on our production. You know, we have to cut back from 3 cameras to 2. We have to reduce the bandwidth from X to Y, and so we're compromised on quality and range in terms of editorial, which is a real problem. They're therefore really excited about the possibility of going into these public frequencies for 5G, where they can license a bit of spectrum at that place and still enable all that, all those tools to be fully available, but also look at the new sorts of tools that I sort of alluded to a little bit early on. So I think it's really interesting in that ability to be easier to move it around globally. Because the spectrums for 5G are closer, I think, aren't they, Matt? Generally speaking.
Yeah.
BT Sport has obviously been working on more than just 5G. It's been developing the use of augmented reality, metaverse-focused content. And Matt, actually, I think you provided a video earlier just to sort of showcase exactly what you've been looking at and developing, and we can look at that video now.
Behind me you see our volumetric video capture rig, which basically captures people in real time and enables to digitally transport them over to a different location, say your home, so you can watch a holographic view of the live action. You can replay, you can look at them from every angle. We're actually capturing 3D video, so the 3D essence of that person.
We're trying to put some of the kind of insights into the game that you see on TV into the hands of people live in the stadiums. And we basically generate a video layer that's sent back to your phone to go over your live camera view, to show you those augmented graphics perfectly lined up.
The experiences we're looking at today rely on the speed and low latency of 5G. Combined with that, we're now looking at how we can use multi-axis edge computing to take some of that massive processor-intensive volumetric rendering away from the devices. So really, we're able to create experiences that you've just never seen before. And with the multiple camera angles, every seat is the best seat in the house.
That all looks like great fun. I'm going to talk about it in a moment.
Yeah.
I did forget at the start to remind you, if you've got any questions for Matt or Andy, usual way to do it, slido.com, event code TechInnoForum. Do keep your questions coming in. I'll ask them towards the end of the session. So, Matt, it does look fantastic, but how do you actually see the development of this type of tech moving forward? How do you want to be using it?
That was a lot to do with that project. Was actually looking at, and Jamie alluded it, just because we can do something, we don't want to unless, it sort of meets the requirements of taking the fan closer to the heart of sport. So we wanted to understand also scalability, doing a one-off or a few proof of concept is great, but to roll it out, you're going to work out what you need, how much the business case. So when we talked about the compute power that you need, lots of people were talking previously about bandwidth, full fibre and 5G, and that does really help. But as you move forward with the deeply immersive technologies, what you're actually running out of is compute power. And this, this is something that when people talk about the larger metaverse, however it materializes, they have to get their heads round. It's moved on from just connectivity. You kind of, for these, you need to expect to have it. So we looked at a number of them and we had lots of people come in. And I think when we talk about, metaverse, whatever that becomes, actually what we've said is instead of focusing on the buzzwords and the which technology, we said, okay, for any of this immersive, and that includes all of the things, so XR, Web3, metaverse, we said, let's put that to one side. We understand that may play a part, but what are we trying to do? And it came down, it was quite simple. If you're a sports fan, you want to be in the stadium. If you can't be in the stadium, the next best thing is in the pub with your mates or at home on the largest screen you can get. So that's a big gap. So how do we use these new evolving technologies to be able to narrow that gap? So if some people will never go to a Premier League match for whatever reasons. First of all, you can't get many tickets and it's really expensive. So we want to be able to take some of that experience, and we understand that, you know, why we're monitoring and trialing all of these new technologies to see how it can fit that brief.
Do you get the sense that fans are excited by the prospect, or they don't really know what is actually possible at the moment?
I think there's two types of fan. I think people are understanding now when you go into a stadium, people are starting to have augmented experiences. So you saw we were doing trials there with graphical overlays. You know, FIFA Plus have come out this World Cup and done similar things, very similar to what we have on our app, but actually in the stadium, that's great. A lot of people will say, you know, I don't want anything, I'm just there to watch the sport. But actually, you don't have to. And augmented experiences in stadium are nothing new. My dad used to take a radio to get the commentary. So it's just how we can use technology to do that. In terms of what could happen in the home around, you know, building your own experiences, we're looking at a lot with augmented reality glasses. VR isn't a good fit for sport, it's social viewing. So when you start to use augmented reality glasses, that's when you can have the conversations that we're having here, but you have, you know, a volumetric, real-time, you can walk around, you know, boxing we did for that. So that's really exciting for us, you know, when eventually, when Apple bring out their augmented reality glasses, you know, no one's really sure, it's very tight on how they release these things, then I believe we're having an iPhone moment where everybody started watching video on an iPhone. When that came out, this is when we'll see AR, XR take off.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess going forward, it does sound it's all about the personalisation of each individual viewer's experience, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Matt's already said it, our kind of watchword or our buzz phrase has always been taking fans to the heart of sport. You know, how do we tell the best stories so that we really engage our customers and who are real sports fans with the sports they love? And that's always been trying to make it more personal, because for you, if you're a Man U fan, you want to be fed information about your team and your club, but you probably definitely don't want to know about Man City. So how do we make sure that when we personalise your experience for you in our, however we're engaging with you on TV or on an app, companion app, whatever it might be, how do we make sure that really resonates with you and makes you a more engaged customer and happier? And so it's absolutely about that personalisation. And that's where edge technologies and things like Web.3 coming and object-based graphics and all these other things really start to lend themselves perfectly, because you can then really bring a personal overlay at the edge, as Matt said, to you where you are. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in the game, at home, big screen, companion screen, in the pub with your mates, wherever you might be, on the move. You know, at the minute, people are watching the World Cup on the move or in the office because of the nature of the time of the day, you know, and being in the office. So it's basically trying to meet fans where they are with the content they want, that they love, so they get the best experience.
Please say loads of questions coming in, which makes my job so much easier. With the augmentation of these broadcasts, how are you going to try and tie in gamification into that? Is there a strategy for that?
Gamification's an interesting one, and we've looked at it. In fact, we held a Innovate 21 in this studio where we had entrepreneurs and startups coming in, and there were a lot around gamification that we looked at there. I think we have to be careful. Certainly, at the moment, there's only a certain amount you can build into the app, or you know, how you're going to do the personalisation. And I think there's opportunities. I think they will. Perhaps as we evolve these technologies, I think it gives you more scope for that. You know, at the moment, you've got the screen and the app. There's only a certain amount of things you can do there. You know, and actually, there's only a certain amount of space that you have. When you start to look at the new immersive technologies, you can start to put things anywhere. You know, we saw on there, we had the large screen for the MotoGP, and then you had a graphical representation where all the riders were. You could click on them, get a personalization, get the helmet cams and stuff. And that's when, okay, in that scenario where you've got enough room for your attention, you can start to say, well, you know, I see a lot more opportunities in that space.
It's an interesting one. Someone says, in the future, might fans be able to choose their music soundtrack? You know, discos, 80s, rock, whatever.
There's no reason that can't happen, and or now. But you've done a lot on object-based broadcasting.
Yeah. So people getting to choose different commentaries. So part of the conversation we've had about localization and personalization is actually, do you want to have a voice that sounds like you as well? If you're back to my point about if you're a Manchester United fan, you might want a London or a Newcastle accent telling you about your club. You might want to have a personal regional accent. And are there clever ways with technology that we can achieve that aren't just lots more people, lots more resource? These are some of the things for sure that we're trying to consider. But yeah, object-based broadcasting enables you, if you don't know, rather than delivering a finished, completely flattened video with audio all mixed and rendered, it's about delivering objects. And we render that in the end device. And so you can choose different audio tracks, different graphics layouts, all that different stuff. It's all, you deliver those objects to the end and then compile them on the end user's device. And that, for sure, you could change it. Obviously, there are some editorial impacts. If you're cutting a music piece, it might not work if you change the music. It might ruin the tone of the piece. So within reason, I'm sure.
How important is it for BT Sport to replicate the matchday experience at a broadcast level for those fans who actually never get to, attend the games themselves in person?
So in terms of on the app, the matchday experience, I think it's been a great opportunity for us. We're seeing a lot of engagement. I think one of the things, and actually it comes back to where I was talking about those gaps, if you can't watch it in front of the big screen, you'll watch it on the small screen. It's live sport. So that's quite a big gap. And that's when we introduced during lockdown, Watch Together, which is the ability to invite 3 friends and have that full interaction. That bridged that gap. So we're always looking at, what we can put into the app, but we need to be very careful, and it goes back to what Andy said, is you don't want to take away from the editorial. We want to give choice, but we still need to tell that story in the way that we always do.
I'm glad someone's asked this. They said, sorry if it's a basic question, but what's involved in setting up a private 5G network in terms of the infrastructure and the costs and things like that?
Well, I mean, it's actually fairly straightforward. You have to have a local 5G, I think it's a technical word for I can't remember what it's called, but basically the cell infrastructure, which is a small box. You have to have some backhaul, some connectivity. Eventually, you have to get back onto the public internet, whether that's on a private local connection or not. But then you just put out a transmitting mast, and you can have all sorts of different beamforms, so you can have very wide angle. So to cover the whole of the Saracens venue, which is a large rugby venue, we only had 2 masts, and it was 2 fibre optic cables run from this small flight case, which is a small suitcase basically, sized with the cell. So really easy actually, and that fibre can be standard broadcast resilient type cabling like SMPTE. It doesn't, so it's really simple to run out and deploy in normal outside broadcast operations. There's some photos of it in that thing.
Yeah.
I think
it was a lot more simple than we thought.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Even down to we've been talking about. There's some things, a lot of things we learned from that, not just technical. When we, you apply for Ofcom to get the licence, and that's a paper exercise at the moment. That takes a certain amount of time. So we've been talking with the regulator and saying, here are the pain points. So it's not just what we learn. For us, actually, we feed back into, a number of industry accelerators, because what we don't want is everybody to do their own thing. For things like this, it's not necessarily innovation, but actually you want it to be standardised, just like radio. So, we look at how we push that back into standards. We work with, BBC, RTE, because you get fragmentation, it just leads to complexity and cost, and that doesn't help anyone.
And in terms of cost, are you therefore saying also that it's not just for the big boys, as it were, big boys and big girls? Some of the smaller companies could be also utilising? Oh,
it totally democratises sport broadcasting. What you could do, and obviously we're a broadcaster, we have many tiers of sport, and Andy addresses them in different ways for the broadcast. But to be honest, the spectrum is £800 for a year.
Wow.
As opposed to the billions that the operators spend, but obviously we don't have as much. So what you can see is you can get some real grassroots sports. You can put up a private 5G network that's operated, do some of the things with the cloud technology, put up a 5G artificial intelligence cameras, which are coming out.
Yeah.
You can start to have, you know, a proper grassroots, so, you know, real local clubs can start to, you know, show the grandparents the game when they've not been able to go and see their grandson or something like that, or daughter.
That's amazing.
Yeah, those ML cameras now are getting really good. I mean, there've been a few horror stories famously in the press, but they are, if you take away that sort of jokey, slightly unfortunate headline, in reality, those systems and those learnings now are getting really, really robust. And they're appearing in form factors which are really resilient, can be left out for long periods of time. You know, that market is really starting to mature in a really interesting way. And you partner that with the connectivity piece, as Matt described, then you've got a really compelling offering, which is very democratised.
Very quickly on that point is everyone thought it was hilarious, one of the first problems they had.
I was being nice, Matt. You're going to tell the story.
Because I thought if I don't get there, he's going back there. So one of them was, I run the line for my lads' football, and one of them was the artificial intelligence got confused because it thought the lino's bold head was the ball and just followed the lino up and down. And which you can see.
I love that. Final thought, because we're actually running out of time. To both of you, really, what has got you most excited about the future?
So for me, it is. I don't want to tie it down to anything, but it's immersive experiences, you know, and how we address that. There's going to be some, you know, really interesting things coming up with metaverse and immersive. And so obviously, as Jamie said, we work for Warner Brothers Discovery, and they've announced a partnership with Infinite Reality to look at new experiences involving metaverse around the cycling. So there'll be more really good, exciting things to come out of that.
Andy?
And for me, I think it's probably, I mean, and Jamie talked about it earlier, and you saw the video, you know, the rate of change in cloud production technologies, or it's really what I call software-defined production, actually. It's no longer relying on hardware, which at the minute is impossible to get hold of. It just isn't available in the market because of all of the component shortages that are really well advertised. The ability to spin up full broadcast production infrastructure en masse, or not, or on scale, you know, really, really quickly. So you can have lots of parallel infrastructure at the same time, or you can have one, or you can have higher quality, or low quality. It's just on and off as you want it. And you can then match the cost base for that exactly with the production. So you, rather than having to invest in a 3 or 5 year return on investment for hardware, sync it in, put it in one place, you get geolocated, everything else. The ability to spin it up in the cloud, you know exactly what it's going to cost you. You can budget it up front, so you fully understand what it's going to be, and operate it from literally anywhere, is really exciting.
Great. Matt, Andy, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you.